Welcome, beautiful souls, to Becoming Her, where we celebrate the vibrant and diverse journeys of trans women and crossdressers. I'm your host, Stephanie Parejamaas, a proud and playful advocate for authenticity and joy. And each episode, we'll dive into inspiring stories of transformation, resilience, self-love, self-acceptance, all well wrapped in a warm and loving embrace. Get ready for a whole lot of fabulousness as we uplift, support, and empower one another. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's unveil some truly remarkable stories. And remember to check out my Patreon, Beautifully Changed with Steph, for exclusive groups, exclusive content, and to join my Discord. And also, like this video and subscribe to my channel. Share this with a friend. And have a beautiful day, remembering you are enough. Your life matters. You are important. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for joining me today for Becoming Her. I'm really excited to hear your story. You look absolutely stunning. And I would like, as before you start telling your story, could you start with how long you've been living as a woman full time, if you are or aren't, and when you started your transition, and then you can kind of go with your story wherever you want.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this. So I have been living as a woman for about, I think, about 20 months now. I've been transitioning medically for around 2 years, almost 2 years. And I live kind of fully as a woman. I basically came out to everybody in my life, both personally and professionally, over about a 3-week period outside of a couple people, most specifically my partner, who I had been out to for a little while longer. So yeah.
Okay, wow, that is a fast and intense 3 weeks.
Yeah, I wrote I other than my partner, everyone was like either a text or an email. And I like wrote out all of them ahead of time. And so I had like a 15-page Word document, each page a different message, and like for specific groups of people in my life. And so I would send one, whichever one felt the most pressing or appropriate in that moment, and then deal with the emotional fallout of that and move on. And 3 days later, send the next one. And by the time about 3 weeks went by, they were all sent, and it was like, okay, like that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you able to tell anyone face to face?
Honestly, I didn't want to.
Okay. Can you
It
talk
really
about that a
was,
little bit? Like what,
yeah.
how that gave you more courage, or how, whatever your decision was to write it out versus talking?
Yeah, it gave me the ability to take my time with it, right? To not feel forced or rushed or feel like it was making like me like kind of sitting someone down and making a bigger deal out of it.
Mm.
And it gave them time to compose themselves too. Like, there's always the possibility that, perfectly nice people, perfectly good people who are going to be accepting of you do something or say something in the moment that isn't the most appropriate thing. You give them a couple minutes to compose themselves, just like you've had all this time to figure out your message to them, then that makes it, in my opinion, less likely that these people that hopefully care about you enough and aren't going to be, purposefully mean or cruel or anything like that, don't accidentally do that. And so it gave me that time to figure out what I wanted the messages to say. And then it theoretically gave them kind of that time to figure out what they wanted to say back.
You know,
So,
that's really, really thoughtful. And also just saves any, like you said, any potential hurt, any accidental, just like immediate response that isn't what you, and then you're like, no, why did I say that? I didn't mean it to come out like that. And then you gave yourself time in between to kind of regroup and then move forward. What was the most rewarding part for you in coming out?
um, in the moment of coming out in those like messages and get everything back was honestly the outpouring of love and support. I am incredibly lucky in that I didn't lose anybody. And
Wow.
I know many people who have not have had the opposite experience, obviously. And so, I have screenshots on my phone of so many wonderful texts and emails back and responses. And I have a text thread with some really good friends that auto deletes after 7 days. And the rule in the thread is no screenshots. There's a reason this auto deletes. And those are the only screenshots of that text thread I've ever taken. And I've told a few of them that, and everyone's totally fine with that. But no, it was really the amazing support that I got from everybody involved. That was the best part of the coming out process for me. And then from there, the best part of the follow-up was, you know, just being out. Another one of the reasons that I did it so quickly was want I had lived so long with multiple parts of myself and with hiding so much of my life and myself from other people who I love and who are some of the most important people in my life. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And so this way I was able to have everyone know so that I could just go and be who I was and be myself and not have to worry about, oh, is this person going to find out the wrong way? Is it going to get back to these other people through these avenues, whatever it was. So that was another reason I was doing it so quickly. It was just like, I'm ready. It's time. Let's go.
And you wanted
So,
it to come from you too. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're just like ready. Like Hannah's ready. She's like,
Yeah.
let me be.
100%.
Let me
100%.
live.
Yes.
And okay, before one more question, then I'll be quiet so you can tell your
No. Questions are great. It's perfect.
Okay, great. So, like, how did you know you were ready and you weren't going to stop, or you weren't going to continue hiding yourself? That you're like, you know what? Enough is enough. It is time for me to live. I'm going to do this. I know I may lose people. I might not. My life might be harder. It might not, or in some ways, or however. But what was the moment when you realized, okay, it's now or never?
It wasn't, I don't think I ever had that specific moment. I had this weird deadline that I kind of had to do it by in a way. I finally came to accept myself when I finally had time to be with myself alone for a long time. I got sick. I had long COVID, and I still do, but it's a lot better now, but I still do. And but when it was really bad, I was losing my breath, getting my kid ready for school in the morning. I would go and have like a 10-minute thing at work, and the very specific one I'm thinking of, I then sat in my car for 30 minutes catching my breath. And so I basically could not do my job anymore. And I contacted my supervisor pretty much immediately and went on leave. And so I was getting better finally after months and months and months. I was out of work for about a year. And during that year, I came to accept myself and knew I was transitioning and knew this was who I was and this is happening. And so I didn't want to have to like go back to work and then transition like at work. And so it really was this like, okay, so if I'm theoretically starting back up at work now, like in 3 months, I kind of got to get everything done. And I actually have a profession where my legal name matters like on a daily basis.
Okay.
And so I had to change that. And so it was like, well, I better like, if I'm doing that process, I should probably be telling people about it. So that's kind of what kind of led me to like the timing of everything. Um, Pretty much once I accepted myself, which was about, I guess about 6 months before I came out, I pretty much knew once I accepted myself that I was going to transition at some point. It wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when. So
Wow, well, I'm sorry that you got long COVID, but it sounds like it was a gift in some ways.
there were a few silver linings. That's
Yeah.
one of them. It was very, 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 very hard. But it did give me the time and space to just sit with myself for the first time. I got that when I was 37. I'm 39 now, 36 or 37, and I'm 39 now. And so it took, it was the first time I'd had since, summers during high school to not have to care how anybody else thought of me that day. And that gave
Yes.
me the freedom to explore who I actually was and what I actually wanted. And then it was all, as I think is a common refrain of a lot of people who get sick, with major illnesses, is like, we don't know how much time I have. And I'm not living for anybody else anymore. I'm living for myself. And so that was pretty much that. And after over the course of a few months, figured that stuff out. And I'd already been questioning, obviously, but figured that out and came out on the other side much happier.
I
So,
love that, Hannah. You sound so empowered and so self-assured and just like, yeah, I'm not sacrificing my life anymore. Like it
yeah,
can
yeah,
go like that, and to be sick for that long and then to start to recover and just have that time to connect with yourself. And what a good point too. Like without summer breaks in school, like
yeah,
when do you get that time to really self-reflect and be bored enough to go within and be
yeah.
like, hmm, what's going
And
on here?
And so I kind of alluded to it a minute ago, but I'm a lawyer. And so I, have had so long where it's like, okay, here's your uniform. It's a suit, right? And then before that, even it's just like networking and professional and all this other stuff where it's like you have, all of these people who like you need their opinions of you to be a certain thing. And in order to be successful, that's what you're told, right? And so once you even get to a point where like plenty of people figure themselves out young. Great, good for them, wonderful. Plenty of us don't. And so once you get to a point where you're starting to figure that stuff out, but you're already being told, hey, all of what everybody else thinks of you matters. And if you have a warped perception of what being trans means or what being different or whatever, you want to discover yourself as or whatever you consider yourself as, then you will immediately feel the need not to be that. And so the only time I finally felt comfortable to figure that out for myself was when I didn't have other people seeing me every day, when I could be like, who do I want to be today? What do I want to wear? How do I want to present myself? And when I did that, I just started picking women's things literally every day. And it's like, maybe there's something here about this that I wasn't willing to accept before.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Like how freeing it is once we don't put so much weight on how we have to be for everyone else or the image that we're supposed to hold to be accepted and loved and valued and all of that. That's really, really powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Okay, so now just kind of share like parts of your story where whatever you feel like you want to share that would be good for other people to hear or know, or just that would just be good for you to share.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm incredibly lucky, and I consider myself very lucky. And uh, I live in a very tolerant place, and my transition and my life, like I said, I didn't lose anybody. Is just I go to a support group, and as they say there, it's like just like with everything else trans related, your mileage may vary. And so everyone is going to have a different path. Everyone's going to have a different road. Um, but I think there are enough similarities and things that I've figured out and things that I've been told that support group and things that I've, discovered myself, um, is you have to be selfish. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Being selfish
Tell
is
me more.
not a bad thing because it's like I said before, it's that you have to live for yourself, right? That notion of being who you are versus being who other people expect you to be is inherently selfish, right? You are deciding to make yourself the priority. And so often we don't.
So then do you have thoughts, Hannah, on the price of not being selfish?
Yeah, absolutely. And the price of not being selfish is not being yourself, is not being
Mm.
able to live authentically, is not being able to walk outside and be who you are every day, of hiding that away because you feel this need to appease others. And everyone's going to have a different calculus with that. It's going to be different for everybody. And I do not fault anyone for remaining closeted, for making whatever determination is right for them. I'm not, like I said, I consider myself very lucky and frankly very privileged to be able to live where I live and be who I am and be in a time where I can get gender affirming care. And plenty of people are not in those positions.
Very, very
And
true. Very
that's
true.
very real for so many people. And so figuring it out on your own time, taking your own time, matters. And that, so it just, but I would caution people to be okay or figure out how to be okay with being somewhat selfish, because I see that as a struggle that I know a lot of friends of mine have had, where it's, you know, oh, I need to be this son or daughter or whatever it may be to, you know, to parents, or I need to be this specific spouse to a partner. And that's going to cause tension in any situation, and you're probably not going to end up being all that happy. And so, like I said, the calculus is different. It's different for everybody, but that's just one thing I've noticed that I've seen a lot of people deal with, that I know I've dealt with plenty. And when you allow yourself to matter as much as, even just as much as those other people and what they want and what they think, when you allow you to even be on equal footing with them, you realize that that changes things.
Oh, so good.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's so, so important that you matter just as much as everyone else that you're trying to take care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, kind of another thing that definitely happened with me, a long, long, long time ago, was as I was, you know, like I said, I'm 39 now. So I was growing up in mostly the 90s is what I remember. And um, so much, you know, I don't know if this will be much use for the younger audience, but it definitely, I hope, would help if there's people around my age or maybe even a little older watching. um, so much of what I was taught about who we are was that it's wrong. That's gross. Um, I thought about this and actually read this text exchange that I had with a friend recently the other day. And the text exchange is months old, but I read it again the other day. And it was about the movie Ace Ventura, which was my favorite movie as a kid. When I was in second grade, I was Ace Ventura for Halloween. And one of the messages that that movie tells you is that trans women are disgusting.
That's right. I even forgot that in that movie because I watched it too, and I just thought like the rhino part was so funny, so I always laugh so hard over
Yeah.
that. But
But
yeah,
the one of the messages of that movie, you know, it's revealed near the end that the villain in the movie is trans, and that all of the men who are in the scene where she's revealed start spitting and wiping out their mouths because they kissed her.
right.
So sometime in the past, they had kissed her, and that was enough that in that moment they needed to wipe out their mouths.
Mm,
And so then when you start realizing in early adolescence, a few years later, that you're different, that maybe you're this, what does that mean? What does that mean? And it means that you are that. You are that thing that will make people disgusted. So you can't be that.
mm,
So you figure something else out. You shunt it to the side. You make it a kink. You make it a fetish. You make it anything other than okay. Anything other than something that you're willing to share with other people about who you are, because of what that means about you. And it's really hard. And I think it's why there's so many people like myself who were closeted for so long, because we learned real early that it wasn't okay to be this way.
mm.
And people have had to work through that shame and that level of self-hatred for so long, um, to finally accept themselves. And I know it took an incredibly long time for me. It took a lot of therapy. And so just kind of, it's another theme that I've seen for trans women in particular, is that there was this tiny bit of terrible representation and
Oh,
it messed with us really badly. And so that's one that I keep coming back to because of how much it meant to me as a kid and how much I mean, I don't know how many times I watched that movie. So
yeah,
yeah.
that's so true. It's interesting. Another lady I was talking with, Elizabeth, she was also sharing how she grew up in the 90s, and I did too, so I'm right there with you. Where she was like, yeah, the culture really made it so that it wasn't okay, that it was scary or dangerous or, disgusting to be trans, right? And so uh she talked about how if the culture would have been a little bit different, she might have felt more comfortable to come out a little bit sooner. But because it was such a negative narrative around it, it kept her closeted for much longer than she would have wanted to. So it's interesting that you're also sharing that. And it's like I totally forgot that part of Ace Ventura, because all I remembered was literally the rhino part. So
Mhm.
thank you for reminding me of that, because that's exactly how it ends. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that is a huge message it's sending everybody.
Yeah. And even, like I said, that was around second grade for me. I have earlier memories from when I was 5 of being on a vacation with my cousins, who are both girls, both older than me, and they painted one of my toes pink, and I loved it. And I started panicking, and I found a pocket knife, and I scraped all the nail polish off before anybody else could see it. But yeah, so I found the pocket knife. I scraped it all off before anybody else could see it, because even at 5, I knew that it wasn't okay for me to like pink, and it wasn't
Whoa.
okay for me to have nail polish on.
Wow. That's Isn't that amazing to think about now? It's like
Yes.
even at 5, you're like, oh, I like it. And then you're like, oh, I can't like it. Quick, get rid of the evidence. And to get
Yes.
a pocket knife and to take your little cute little 5-year-old toes and like scrape off
It was
the
just one. It was just the big toe, so I wasn't like
okay,
going with all the tiny ones, but
okay,
still, point
but
remains.
still,
Yeah.
you're 5
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
your big toe, and
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
So, I mean, those are the things where then, 6 years later, when you start realizing how much you like feeling pretty,
Yeah.
you have years and years of ingrained stuff that's not okay. And so that's, whether you're fans and watching this and you're going through something else, or whether, sharing this with somebody might help them realize or understand why we've felt the way we've felt for so long. Those are always just been two kind of really big things that have stuck with me over the years.
Hmm.
So,
Is there anything that you read or watched or an experience you had that gave you like just a little hint or a little bit of permission that it's okay to be you?
um, honestly, the first time was in therapy. It wasn't anything specific about reading or watching. It was a couple exercises that my therapist and I did together of meditation, that really helped. It was like a safe space meditation. Because even when I first started talking to my therapist about this, I literally couldn't say a lot of the words. It was a Zoom therapy, and I had to type them into the chat. I could not verbalize it, and I literally speak for a living. It's, the majority of my job,
Yeah.
and I couldn't do it, and it caused a lot of anxiety and a lot, and so just the meditation really helped. And then having done it that first time, obviously, made it easier the next time I had to talk about it, and the next time, and the next time, and the next time. And like I said, now I go to support groups. I've been living as a woman for a year and a half, so it's very easy now.
When did you start just like, so it was basically you were like, okay, I need to go to therapy. I need to talk about this. I need to make room. And you're right. You're like, you do talk for a living, and you can clearly tell that you do, because you're amazing. You're an amazing talker. Um, And it is really cool too how the first time it might be the scariest thing in the world to say something out loud. Then it gets easier and easier and easier with each moment. So, Hannah, can you share like how your life has improved since you've like accepted yourself and transitioned, and also maybe some of the challenges that you face now,
Yeah.
like today? Because I understand growing up, but what about right now, now that you are?
Totally.
Because
Yeah.
there's got to be challenges that you're still facing.
In terms of the way my life has improved, just I'm a much happier person. I smile way more. And it wasn't like I was inherently unhappy before, but I think there's plenty of us who experience dysphoria differently. Like there's kind of the classic one where it's like, oh my God, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I need to change it. I've talked to a number of friends that actually experience it the way I do, which is that it's not as much that we like hate where we are, hate what we see. Rather, it's that as soon we just it's more of a numbness. And then once you find something you like, you're like, oh, that's what it feels like to like how my body looks. Oh, okay, that means something. And then then you just get more and more of that feeling. So it's much more of like a euphoria versus a numbness rather than a euphoria versus a dysphoria. So I have so much more of that euphoria now on a very regular basis. And I just live a much happier existence, frankly, than I did before. So that's, I think, the biggest difference in terms of a positive. In terms of the challenges, this is going to sound superficial. You can't tell from this video because I've been sitting down the whole time. I'm 6'4", or at least I was immediately before I started HRT. I think I've shrunk just about an inch there, and I weigh well over 200 pounds. And so finding clothes is not always easy, especially professional ones, and also ones that make me feel confident and pretty enough to like go out to like bars, things like that. So it is still a decent bit of a challenge. If I get an order from online and I bat like 1 out of 4, that's a great day. So it is still, it's not the easiest thing there. I think it's part of what I was talking about before about feeling so privileged is that like I, as a lawyer, do come from a place of authority to an extent. Like, people oftentimes find my job intimidating or things like that. And I have no problem advocating for myself or others, because it's what I've trained for over a decade and a half to do now. And although the advocating for myself thing really only came in the last few years, like that was definitely learning that was part of coming out. But advocating for others, I'm still very good at.
Yeah.
So this sounds, I don't face that many challenges in relation to being trans on a daily basis or on a real regular basis. I live in the Bay Area.
Okay.
And so I live in a place that is very accepting, and like if you listen to my voice, I very clearly have not done voice training. This is how my voice has always been. I don't have any voice dysphoria. I don't feel the need to try to pass. And so I don't face any of those like kind of challenges or disappointments when I don't, things like that. And so like I just live and I go out and I do it, and I'm not apologetic about anything, about existing or being who I am. And so day-to-day challenges about being trans, um, I'm incredibly fortunate to say that I don't have those as much as I know so many other people do. I was even saying in my support group the other night, because a lot of people were worried about their jobs. Somebody was trying to find a job, things of that nature. I got my dream job after coming out. I literally had wanted this job for over a decade. I had applied for it and interviewed for it 7 times, and I never got it. And I came out, and then about a year later, I got it.
Wow. Do you
So
think the coming out helps you know that you're more worthy, you're enough, you accept yourself, you'll accept what you want, you'll be able to receive more of like your dream job or
yeah.
receive and it sounds like you are very confident in who you are. So it makes sense when you go out and about in the world, you're not going to be apologetic for who you are. You're like, listen, I could have died. I'm owning this life. This is my life. I'm going to live it. I'm going to love it. I'm going to find the peace, the joy, the happiness, and I'm going to embrace all of it. So
Yeah, I think it did to an extent. There was definitely, I can very much remember something I said in the interview for the job, where it was basically like, look, I know I can do this job, and before I know I would have had more insecurity towards that. And it was more just like, look, this, I know I would be able to come in here and do this job really well. And it was that advocating for myself and finding worth in myself that definitely changed. One last kind of story about my professional life. Um, I had this internship in law school, and I was there for about 2 years, and in various capacities. And they had my supervisor there had a policy where if you wanted a letter of recommendation, you had to write it. And then they would review it, they would edit it, they would sign it, but you had to write the letter. By any metric, I was incredibly successful at that internship, by any metric. I've done things there that I know had never happened in those internships earlier. Just experiences that I was able to go through and accomplishments that I had. And I never wrote that letter. I could not write the positive things about myself that needed to be written in order to write that letter. And after coming out, I wrote the letter and I emailed it to a friend of mine who I was at that internship with. And I read it now, and it's like nothing about the letter changed. Like there's nothing in that letter that I didn't know I had done during the time I was there. But I just knew that I could do it now, that I was worth that letter now, that I was valuing myself and who I was and what I did so much more now than I did before. And all of that came from not inherently the coming out part, but the mental change that I had to go through to find value in myself and in who I was, and not hating that part of myself that is so much of now who I am.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great example to show that, just to not even be able to acknowledge any of your positive contributions to then being like, look how badass I am. I'm amazing. I love that. Okay, so then I have a question, because you said this in like
Sure.
kind of professional life. So what about then in your personal life with your friends or with your partner? How have you noticed since transitioning that you feel more connected to people? Or do you even?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I'm able to be more open and share more about myself, right? And share what I like, and not feel the fear of, oh no, if they know that I like this thing, then maybe they'll figure out that I am trans. And wasn't thinking they'll figure out I'm trans. I was thinking they'll figure out something else about me, but that they'll figure out that I'm trans. Because I don't have to hide this part of myself. So I'm able to make myself more vulnerable. I'm able to have more emotional conversations. I'm able to let people in more. And in doing so, I'm able to connect with people on a lot deeper levels than I was before. And so it really has, accepting myself and coming out has changed my life in so many amazing positive ways that I can't fully begin to get into. But no, in terms of interpersonal connections with friends and family and loved ones, it's pretty amazing.
I love that. That's so great. So, okay, Hannah, for time's sake, is there anything else that you wanted to share with the listeners that from your story, or just anything that you think is important for them to think about or consider or to know? Or both?
You know, I honestly probably not. I think we covered like a great deal of it, and I have it did not take me out or transitioning how much I like to hear myself talk. I've kind of always had that. So like if you just let me go on, I'll keep going. So I think now would probably be a decent enough time to wrap this up. So
Okay. Okay, so I have two final questions.
sure.
So one, what is a femininity tip that you would give somebody, like any of the listeners, subscribers, that you're like, this has been so helpful, and with like embracing my femininity or feeling more feminine, anything like that, just any feminine tip?
Yeah. One thing, this is a little more practical.
Really practical.
A lot of major department stores like Macy's, Nordstrom's, things like that have free private shopping at a lot of their locations. So when I was first trying like to find my style and find my, even, before I was fully accepting who I was, you can just go online, request a private shopping thing, give them your sizes, give them what you're looking for, and then you show up. And as long as you can just like, talk to that one person, which I know can be really hard. It was very hard for me. But if you just talk to that one person, say, hi, this is my name. I have a private shopping thing. And then you can go in and there's a dressing room, full private dressing room that people have taken the last couple days, pulling things from the store and having there available for you to try on in privacy without having to like walk around the women's section, which is a lot harder than talking to one person and say, hi, I have a private shopping experience. So that was one thing I found out and figured out like early on where I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So there's a lot of stores that do it, but Macy's and Nordstrom's, I think, were the two that were near enough to me that did it. So check your local department stores for things like that because it's awesome. So
That's amazing. I didn't know that. See, I love this question. This question is so great. That is so, so good. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, what is your favorite purchase? Like Tim Ferriss asks like all of his guests this question. I was like, it's such a good one. And I was thinking, we're all on a budget of some sort. So what's something you've bought in the last year under $100 that you were like, this is a must-have item, run and go and get yourself one?
They're like a really great budget one that I have like all of the ones of this that I've bought are still under $50. I think I have like 8 shades or something like that. It's okay, maybe not quite under 50, but definitely under 100. I have like 8 shades of like this Maybelline matte stay lip color. And like it'll last through food, drinks, hours and hours and hours all day. And they're like $8, $9 a shade. And so they're like really like square tubes, Maybelline matte. You'll find them, and yeah, I have them in like, I think my wife introduced me to it at first, but like I have at least 8 different shades, and then I lost one and bought that same one, and now I have 2 of those because of course I found it in my purse like a week later. So yeah.
I love that. Those are awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Hannah, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really, really appreciate it. And everyone, give Hannah love in the comments. I mean, it's so brave to come out and vulnerable to share her story. So definitely give her some love. And remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and we'll hear more stories together. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.